Engine 1 from car 1. Car 1's on scene at Subin Command. Give me a C.A.N report.
Boring as shit for the most part, right? I'm going to try to switch that up a little bit. Yeah, they're insufferable for the most part. And that's why I had like a real big issue with it. And I don't want to say that's kind of why I didn't buy in until I was at my worst. But I think that had a little bit to do with it. 6 Feet Over is kind of the name of this. I kind of switched the name up because I had to show progression and kind of what was going on in my life. So we went from 6 Feet Over to IDLH, right? I thought that would hit kind of home for all you guys. In-death life happened. It's kind of like my story about getting to the worst part where I didn't want to be around anymore, and then finally having to hit rock bottom to realize that, man, this is actually pretty awesome. Let's see. So real quick, when Rusty was talking to me in the beginning, he was like, hey, man, you know, like, I kind of wanted you to, like, do, like, an FDIC talk about an hour, hour and a half. And I thought this was kind of funny. This is my rejection letter from FDIC. They said I had no business talking to anybody up there. So, Paul, you know, if you could talk to some of your friends, that'd be real great about possibly getting me on the circuit. Anybody in fire engineering? So real quick, I'm going to give you guys a little brief story about how I grew up. Hopefully you guys can like kind of hit on this and maybe it's resonates a little bit with some of you guys. Grandparents are fresh off the boat from Ireland. That was me as a child. I don't know who I was talking to on the phone, but I was meaning business. My dad, I grew up in a pretty structured Irish Catholic family. My dad was working class. My dad was first lieutenant in the infantry in Vietnam. Afterwards became a Miami-Dade police officer. My old man ruled with an iron fist. And amazing person. And I'm still about the belief that he didn't hit me unless I deserved it, right? Probably should have hit me a couple more times. My mother, amazing mom, worked with my father for a really long time. We had a really cool household dynamic. My dad was gone a lot for work, but for the most part, he was always very present. Even working a job where he was getting night tours and stuff like that, he was always over at the house. He was always sitting there trying to get me to my ball games, taking me to hockey, doing all these different things. So he was actually pretty amazing as far as a father. Like I said, I did grow up in an Irish household. Drinking was very, very prevalent when I was growing up. It didn't matter what was going on, celebrations, funerals, anything. It was always inside the house, right? It wasn't a Christmas unless someone got hammered and got into a fist fight. It wasn't a divorce party unless someone got hammered and got into a fist fight. It wasn't a wedding until something like that happened. So it was around a lot. And I'd say I started off my kind of drinking career a little bit earlier than other people, and it was somewhat condoned inside the household. I think it would have worked out probably if I had the non-addict side going on with me, but I kind of hit the ground running. I was pretty heavy into drinking right around high school. So up on the screen right here is TGK. TGK is the correctional facility in Miami-Dade. And if I would have been continued on the way I was going throughout middle school and high school, this is exactly where I was going to end up. The first middle school I went to, I was kicked out of and ended up in like a secondary school for troubled kids. If you guys have ever seen those shows where the Scared Straight, that was me. I was in about 3 or 4 different episodes of that for the most part. I kind of did the exact same thing when I got to high school. Like I said, my drinking was pretty progressed at that point. So all the parties and stuff kind of turned into a mess for me as well. I was kicked out of 2 different high schools. I was able to actually get my shit together right around the end, went to night school for a year and was able to graduate, which I didn't think was possible. Right after that, I got a job. Right around 15 years old, I got a job bar backing, and I was already in the bar scene, and I hit the ground running as far as that was concerned. Obviously, no one's supposed to be drinking at 16, 17 years old, but when you're working at the bar, the bartenders kind of take a blind eye to that. Also, right around this time, really into punk rock music, hardcore. You know, we've had these conversations before. So I was in a scene that was a lot older than I was, right? I was kicking it with a whole bunch of the older kids, getting into fights, getting in trouble, getting brought home by the police, which my father really didn't take too keenly to that, seeing as how my dad was a cop. I was kind of the talk at the station that he was at, that he had the troubled kid. And I was in a band, which allotted me a lot more partying. We got to go on an East Coast tour a couple times, went over to the West Coast, and I got into a lot of trouble doing that stuff as well. And right around this time while I was working inside the bar, my uncle worked for the city Miami Fire Department, and we were having a conversation about what I was going to do with my life, because I was kind of getting to that point where it was getting a little bit difficult to keep going. And my dad was really big on the cop side. My uncle was really big on the fireman side. And it was funny when we had the conversation, my uncle started talking. He was like, let me ask you a question. He's like, you like hanging out with your best friends all the time? I was like, yeah. He's like, you like adventures, right? And I said, hell yeah, I do. And those big fire trucks, you like those? I said, yep. And he goes, you like sleepovers? And I said, yeah, I love sleepovers. Right? He's like, you like eating dinner with the boys? I said, hell yeah, I do. And he's like, man, I got to tell you, you're really going to like the fire service. And my father looked up and he goes, shit, I got nothing. Don't be a cop. So right around this time, I sat there in South Florida. Everyone's going to get kind of feel a little weird with this. We do have to do EMS in South Florida. So I had to go before you're hireable for the most part. You have to sit there and you have to do your EMT. You have to do your paramedic, right? So with fire and getting your fire 2 and everything, it's about 2 years of schooling. So I started right around 21. At 23, I was hireable and I was off to the races and I did ride times down in the Keys a couple times and I got hired in Paradise. I got hired in the city of Marathon in the Florida Keys. And now looking back on things, I did shit ass backwards. I should have gone to a really busy department first while I was young and really wanted to get after it. And then retired down in the Keys, maybe with the Chiefs gig and just relax at the beach, hanging out, going on the boat, going down to Key West, but I did things different. I was super lucky as far as culture was concerned when I got down there. The captain that was there was already really, really involved in training and going to different conferences and stuff. So the crew that I had there right off the rip was really, really special. And it kind of set that foundation for me as a fireman. I got super excited doing the ride times. I rode closer to home in city Miami. And, I got to see a lot of really cool things. And when I got down to the Keys, it felt like everything had come together. First fire I ever got was December 31st, I want to say 2008. And it was down in Chica Lodge. So we had to take almost a 40-minute ride to get down there. And this thing was ripping. And we got there and Miami-Dade Fire Rescue was there and everybody had come. It was this huge fire. And I thought every fucking day was going to be like backdraft. Until I got on the ambulance and I realized every day is not like backdraft. While I was down in Marathon, I was down there about 8 or 9 years. I got to go to my first fire department funeral. A guy who I trained with a whole bunch, got to know his family real well by the name of Bill Manning, worked at the Kissimmee Fire Department, ended up passing away. And the reason I put that picture up there, it was the first firefighter funeral I went to, but it was also the first time I met EJ. Me and EJ, you'll hear more about it, had a pretty crazy past, and it definitely started off in kind of a trauma bonding scenario. And if you guys have ever heard the Fool's Toast, the only reason the Fool's Toast is around is because of EJ. So at this point, guys, I'm fully engrossed into the fire service. I have that buy-in. Everything that you hope to have from a new recruit, I was 100%. I was taking TRT classes. I was going to every conference, and I joined the South Florida Fools. So it was real, real neat. So like I said, right around, let's see if this video plays. Oh, I've got no audio on it. No. Anyway, this is just the hijinks that happens in Fort Lauderdale. You can kind of hear it maybe. It's like I got smacked on the pole and then flour. But anyway, moving from a department I was at for 8 years it was a struggle. I almost really didn't want to leave. But again, with the training and me wanting to progress in my career, I thought going to a big city department was going to be a beautiful thing. And it was. It was so cool. The parties were out of control. And again, this kind of goes back to my family. There's a party for everything. It didn't matter what it was. There was a line of duty, whether there was a promotion, whether there was a retirement ceremony, whether someone was having a kid, we always found a reason to party. And I think that's super healthy. One thing I kind of want to get clear right now is even after the stuff that I put myself through, I am not anti-alcohol. I'm not going to come up here and say that if you guys are struggling with alcohol, if you have a friend that's struggling with alcohol, they need to quit completely, like they need to get that out of their system. I'm of the mind that anything that gets in the way of your family life, your work, your personal stuff, anything that gets in the way of your grind, I think you should nix. I don't give a shit if it's a woman or a dude or alcohol or drugs, anything. I feel like at that point, that's where you need to start making some changes. But I don't want you to come here and think that because I put myself through that, and that's very important also. I put myself through everything that happens in the rest of the story, that I'm anti going out and partying. Because I went through that during the kind of thing with my sobriety. When I started getting sober, I had a lot of therapists and clinicians tell me that I needed to kind of change my evil ways. They didn't want me hanging out with the people that I was hanging out with. They didn't want me hanging out with the boys. They didn't want me going to concerts. They wanted me to get a new friends group. What ended up happening was I did all that, and I found a sober group of people to hang out with. Sober people fucking suck. All right? They're boring. And what ended up happening, right? Since I'm going through depression and all this other stuff, what ended up happening was I started getting fucking sad again because I'm not hanging out with the boys. Once I realized that it was kind of alcohol was the issue and I could still sit there and do all this stuff and come out and I can go to these conferences and go to weddings and hang out and still do the exact same thing, things got a lot easier. But like I said, Fort Lauderdale, I hit the ground running here and got really involved in the department with all the social activities. And at this point, my drinking got completely out of control. So let's talk about alcoholism. Now that I've been doing this for a little while, I get a whole bunch of people, and it's really, really weird having conversations with people now because it starts off where no one really wants to talk, and then you'll have a dude at the table that'll come up to you and be like, hey, man, when you were really like at your worst, how much were you drinking? And I know I got you at that point because as soon as you start asking that question, you're already thinking in your head you might be drinking a little bit too much. But like I said, the fact of the matter is I really think that it becomes a problem when it's really starting to affect your life, right? When you're starting to get sad, you're making questionable decisions, work is suffering, your home life, which is paramount, is starting to suffer. So the clinical, I guess, or the definition is an addiction or consumption of alcoholic liquor or the mental illness and compulsive behavior resulting from alcohol dependency. So with that said, in kind of a dumb fireman way of saying this, is I didn't think that I could really do anything without having a cocktail. It didn't matter what it was. If I was going to a party, if I was going to a fucking kid's 2-year-old birthday party, I was going to have a couple drinks before I went. And that really started messing with my head because it became that dependent nature that I guess I was born with, kind of really went full swing at that point. So right around this time, so I'm in Fort Lauderdale. I think I was in my first or second year at that time. I had one of the most crushing things in my life happen to me. And it didn't just happen to me. It happened to the entire fire service. So Chief Matt Negley worked for City of Orlando Fire Department. And the city of Fort Lauderdale kind of, well, 100% did, made our fire conference was a huge part of our department and kind of modeled it around Matt. And Matt sat there and helped us do everything along with the City of Orlando Fire Department. And if you guys never met him before, this dude was the guy that you wanted to be. I mean, everything about him, right? This guy lived and breathed the fire department. He was spot on in his teaching and he put students first, which I really, really loved. Being an instructor and even a student of the fire service, having that one instructor that can really get down to your level, keep you engaged the entire time and make sure that you retain all your information was so important. And Matt was that guy. And, you know, my mentor at work was completely obsessed with this dude. So I was all in when it came to Matt. It was actually funny. The last time that I had a conversation with him, I taught with him the year before. And I was in the benevolent at the time, and I was tasked to go hand out food. And I remember going to the site that he was at, and I was sitting there handing stuff out, and all the Orlando guys walk up, and they're all standing in the line, and Matt looks at me, and he goes, you suck so much at teaching, they got you serving me fucking food now? And I was like, got me again. Well, anyway, Matt ended up passing away. It was a suicide, and it was a nail in the fire service. And going up there and actually seeing someone that like I looked up to so much and wanted to be in my, fire career, it was actually the first time that I actually thought at this point, like, man, like suicide is actually a real thing. Like it happens to like good guys also. So right around that time, so at Matt's funeral, the middle picture, I know you guys probably know Losi already. We got EJ in the middle, and then there's fathead Brendan Coulter. So this is at Matt's funeral. We ended up closing down the TGI Fridays, and EJ had come down for Matty's funeral. EJ at this point had gotten a little religious. And one thing I will say, I don't talk too much about religion in my post, because after going through treatment and stuff like that, a lot of the things, that I've talked to after speaking to different people, if they don't really have a religious background or something like that, they get completely turned off as soon as faith and everything else comes into it. I do have my own personal faith. I'm happy to share it with everybody afterwards, but I hate sitting there and adding that in here because I don't want everyone to stop listening at this point because they think I'm a Bible thumper. So just remember that. But EJ was really big on faith. And after EJ had left Charleston and ended up going into North Charleston, he was constantly sitting there trying to get me to go to church and do all these things. And like I said beforehand, me and EJ had a really crazy bond. It was like every time that someone ended up passing the fire service, me and him ended up rooming together. So we had some pretty cool late night conversations just sitting there talking. And I want to say about 3 months later when EJ passed, it was just a shot in the heart for me. Another big thing, answer texts. Answer text. If one of your buddies is sitting there trying to talk to you, answer text. The last text I got from EJ was, hey, man, do you have 5 minutes? And I completely ignored it because I was out doing something else, probably drinking, and I never got to speak to him again. So take pictures and answer texts is one of the things I want to get to. So I never really truly recovered after EJ ended up passing away. I remember flying home from Erie, Pennsylvania, and there was something different about me. My drinking was an all-time high at that time. My relationship was kind of in the gutter. I kind of skipped over this part, but I was in a 13-year relationship. I had a fiance and completely shot this in the head because of my drinking habits. I just wasn't there as a partner. To be honest with you, I don't think I've been a good partner. I wasn't a good partner until I, stopped drinking. And so I ruined that relationship. I jumped right into another one. And I remember coming home from the airport that day, and she even said, what's wrong with you? And my girlfriend at the time. And I was just like, man, you know what? I don't know. Slowly but surely, with my drinking habits and not really processing the fact that EJ and Matty passed away, I got into this like weird tunnel. I'm going to go over like the signs that I was experiencing as far as depression is concerned. But I just felt kind of like I was drowning, like I was stuck, like I couldn't move. And it didn't matter, like those elated feelings that I was normally getting from hanging out with the boys and doing all those things, maybe having a couple drinks, going to a sporting event. I didn't want to do any of that shit anymore. I was kind of just in my own head. One of the telltale signs that I know everyone in here is when you start seeing someone go to their bunk throughout the entire day, right? And sitting there and like he'll come out for chow for a little bit and then shoot right back in. He's kind of distant when he's on calls. That was me. And I know that my crew was starting to notice this at this time also. Speaking to my crew afterwards, especially when I was in this point in my life, they started talking to me. They felt really, really bad after what ended up finally happening because they felt like they could do more. There's one thing not wanting to get your homies hemmed up by sitting there and telling somebody that you think someone's fucked up, and there's a complete opposite of just turning a blind eye to a situation. And everybody that I spoke to that was at my station at that time knew that something was going on, but they didn't want to say anything because they didn't want to get me in trouble. Going over to the signs of depression that I was feeling at this time, like I said, the emotional withdrawal. I was a horrible partner, the sad, hopeless, and irritable. Man, I was angry, and that kind of ties into the rage point. It didn't matter. Normal bullshit calls that I was running, little small bad things that were happening in my life, I just took completely out of whack. I was arguing with everybody all the time. Loss of interest. So the fire service has always been my thing, right? Fire service and music. I couldn't give a fuck if I ever went to a fire conference anymore when I was in the state. Didn't care if I caught a job. Didn't care anything. I just did not want to be at work anymore. Also the weakness, right? The physical weakness. When you switch over into that where drinking is just a constant thing, and it was for me, my physical state was getting real, real bad. It was completely diminished, right? Like I was weak and I was physically weak, and I didn't have any interest in going to work out or better myself mentally or physically. I mean, everything was starting to get worse. I was hungover every day at work. When we did get something, I felt like I was cramping up all the time, and I knew something internally inside my stomach, and everything else was kind of going bad. Reckless. We hear a lot about that asset and liability things. One thing that we don't talk about that I kind of think we take a blind eye to also is dudes that just don't give a fuck about anything when they get on a fire. Yeah, they're great, right? You know, you don't have to worry about them running into a burning building, but someone who is reckless with their life is a liability on a fire ground, right? So I got to the point where I didn't care if I lived or died. That is the last guy that you want operating in a fire, because that guy's going to make a mistake and he's going to put everybody else in jeopardy. And that's something that you got to think about also when talking to the crews and everything afterwards, is they were letting me operate like this and kind of thought it was all real fun, that I was so outlandish and I was running into everything and I was quick and I was aggressive in doing these things. But at the end of the day, that's going to turn out really, really bad for everybody. Trouble sleeping, right? If you sit there and you look at depression for the most part, after getting a shitty night, either on an ambulance or working on an engine or a truck, these all happen when you get home. They're just completely amplified when it's happening consistently, and you can't really get out of that. Intervention, group activity. So everybody finally got together. Chief Mike Salzano from the City of Fort Lauderdale Fire Department and Captain Joe Fox decided that they were going to have an intervention with me because they realized that I was starting to get real bad. Another thing that I kind of skipped over also, esophageal varices is a real thing. I know we hear about it. If you guys have ever gone to EMT or paramedic school, hear about people throwing up blood. This started happening to me in a very, very small amount. I thought there was something wrong with my teeth, and I was always spitting up blood, but it was actually my esophagus was starting to rupture at that time, And I was just at certain points, I would actually cough up blood, and I just thought, you know, it'll eventually work itself out. Well, I ended up doing this in front of one of my captains. He ended up afterwards getting the ball moving, and Chief Mike Salzano and Captain Joe Fox decided to come to my house at 8 o'clock at night to tell me that I was going to sleepaway camp. And I call sleepaway camp rehab, just for everybody. So real quick, here, Walt, come over here real quick. I'm going to have you come up here. Walt, Bart, you two. So you guys are Mike Salzano, and you could be Joe Fox. All right? Now, I want you guys to come and see. We're going to see how this intervention goes. So I'm here. I'm at the house. I'm hanging out. You guys knock on the door. Proceed.
Hey, fuck up. We need to talk. Yeah.
About what? About what? Here, you can be my girlfriend. Here, stand up real quick. You can be my girlfriend. But no, you're kind of angry with me, so put your foot up here. Put your foot up here like you're just watching everything.
He's got better hair, and her mustache is better.
Yeah.
One of these.
So go ahead.
Hey, man, we need to talk to you.
About what? The fuck are you guys doing here?
We're kind of...
What the fuck are these guys doing here?
Oh, I don't know, babe. I'm just mad at you.
All right, go ahead.
Listen, you know what the fuck we're here for.
I honestly don't.
Wait, come on. Really?
No, I don't. I have no idea.
Man, you've kind of been reckless, and we want to make sure everything's all right.
Babe, you know what's up.
Fuck you. Fuck
Hey,
you.
hey,
Fuck you.
Hey,
Your family sucks. I fucking hate you. You're a shitty company officer. Fuck you.
Hey.
How could you bring these people to my fucking
I love
house?
you, babe.
I fucking hate you. All right, thank you guys very much. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Hey. So anyway, that's how interventions go, right? It's not the fucking movie things. Everyone's sitting there screaming, and eventually they go off to this beautiful summer camp. They hang out, and they go to the mountains. They go to Maine. This place is beautiful, by the way. Love everything about it. What the fuck? Yeah, all right, we're back. So anyway, that's exactly how that intervention went. I sent everyone to hell. I said a lot of things that I could probably never take back. I'm not with that woman anymore. But anyway, so anybody who's in deep crisis and stuff like that is going to start making concessions and promises that they know they can't keep. And that's exactly what I did. I sat there and I lied, and I was like, well, I want to be here for the family for Christmas, so I promise I'll go after Christmas. And they were like, and it took a little while. I finally convinced them. I got them out of there. I got into a huge argument with my beautiful bald girlfriend over here for about 2 hours. And then I had about 2 weeks to sit there and, kind of work this out in my head. And that's when I went to, let's see if I can get over here. Sleepaway Camp, Attempt 1. That's a horror movie reference to The Butcher's Knife, if anybody had it. But anyway, because that's what it kind of felt like when I was doing it. But I sat there, I made all these promises or whatever, and I decided that I was going to go to an inpatient rehab facility for the first time. Inpatient rehab, if you guys have never been, it sounds real scary. It's not. It's not at all. With that said, you cannot go get into this mode of recovery or trying to help yourself or get better if you are going to fix a relationship, if you're trying to keep a job, if you're trying to figure out a work-life balance, all of those things. The only way that any of this is going to work is if you want to be there yourself. And I know that gets said a lot. And I thought when I got there the first time and all these old timers were sitting there talking, I was like, these guys are so full of shit. But if you don't want recovery for yourself, deep in your heart, and I mean to the point where you are, I realize that there's something wrong in my life. I realize that I'm hurting everyone that I love, and I need to fix my heart, my soul, everything. And I know this is my fault. You're really taking full accountability. Until you can sit there and say all that shit and mean it, rehab is fucking pointless. You're going on a month-long vacation where you're going to hang out with a whole bunch of other degenerate firemen and hang out. And you're going to sit there and you're going to do art, and you guys are going to sit there and do breath work, and you're not going to take any of the good stuff that comes along with it. And what ended up happening, so I sat there and I proved everybody wrong. I got out of rehab, right? I did my month. I think I did 40 days. I got out of there. This is the first time I've been sober in probably, 15, 16 years. I get out of there. I feel like $1 million, right? They talk about this in sobriety where you have this like pink cloud, right? You get out and, dude, I'm telling you, it's completely different. You start seeing colors different. Shit sounds better. You're not as irritable. You like people. You can have normal conversations without running off to the bar or sneaking a shot. So when I got out of there, I just assumed everything was going to be fucking perfect, because everything was when I was in that fucking small bubble in Deerfield Beach, right? What everyone tends to forget is life is still going on the outside. Everything is still going on, right? That woman, my beautiful bald girlfriend over here that I completely pissed off, I thought I was going right back home. That's not happening anymore. She wanted me out of her life. Work. Now that you've gone to rehab, everyone thinks that you have this stigma, but in the actual reality is when I got back from work, I feel like everyone was so happy that I finally went to go get help that they were like really excited for me. But I wasn't ready for it because I didn't really go to rehab for myself. I went there to shut everybody the fuck up, right? You have a problem? All right, well, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to prove to you I don't have a problem and I can stay sober and I can do all this shit, and didn't put any of the goddamn work in. So I ended up getting out. She told me it was over and I said, fuck sobriety. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. And what did I do? I went right over to Flanagan's, which is a cool bar in Florida if you've never been before, and I hammered a bottle of Jameson. At that point, I had realized that this was my option, right? I had lost everything in my life. I was completely convinced that everybody in the crew was just hating me, didn't want anything to do with me. And I thought that this was the option. And that's a crazy fucking thing. It is crazy when you sit there and you sit down and all of a sudden, I don't want to try any of the easy shit. Like, I don't want to start going to the gym. I don't want to start, working out, going to a therapist. Like, those all seem pretty fucking easy. Eating consistently, hanging out with good people. Now, fuck that. I want to shoot myself. That's where I was at. I was at the lowest part of my life. And I can't really explain to you how overwhelming and utterly pointless all of that was for me. But I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And I was just okay with the fact that this is going to be the end of me. This is going to sound real shitty. I guess I'm a vain person. I had originally had this gun and I'd sat there and I looked at it 1,000 times. I had it in my lap. I had the round that figured out that I wanted to kill myself with. I thought about decorating it. And when I really started thinking about it, I was like, man, I really don't want to fuck my face up because I want everybody in the fire service and all my friends around the world to see how bad this actually was because I wanted an open casket. That's sick. That's sick as shit. But when you sit there and you start really ruminating and having these like weird suicidal ideations, like you need to pull the cord at that point, because when you start thinking about who's going to be at your funeral, what songs are going to be played, you're in a really fucking dark place. But the help is always right there. And I don't know why at that point or that moment in my life, I just couldn't jump out there and I don't know, throw a Hail Mary and just hope someone like caught it or listened to me. But I just couldn't do it. So what I ended up doing was I was resolved at the fact that I was an alcoholic. My grandfather passed away from alcoholism. Both of my parents are alcoholics. My mom got diagnosed with cirrhosis probably 10 years prior to this and cut it cold turkey. And she's healthier than she's ever been in her entire life. I was just okay with the fact that I'm going to drink myself to death. What that meant is at my worst, I was probably drinking about a 1.75 to a little bit more of either vodka or Jameson a day. It got to the point where I was still going into work. I was going into work. I couldn't do IVs anymore. If I had to help out like on a car accident or something like that, because my hands were shaking so bad. It got to the point where I was sitting there and pulling the narcs out of the drug box and keeping them in my room because I was afraid I was going to have a seizure at night because the DTs had gotten so bad. Also, the esophageal varices. I was at Station 46, and we had a busy-ass night. I got back. I was going to go shower up because I had something to do during the day. I coughed. Blood came out, and then I started profusely throwing up blood all inside the bathroom, all over the floor. And I'm telling you, it was just there's no other feeling like throwing up hot blood for an extended period of time. I sat there naked as shit, ran out there, banged on the officer's door, said, hey, man, I got to go to the hospital. They threw me in the back of the ambulance. 2 weeks in the hospital. I think I had 6 blood transfusions at that point, and they finally got the bleeding under control. What ends up happening when you're a hardcore alcoholic is you get, I forget exactly what it is, but it's a hypertension that ends up causing your esophagus to bleed and pop and do all these things. And really, once this starts, there is no stopping it. A really humbling moment for me where I knew I was close to the end. I was at a different station. We were doing a RIT drill, and I completely bombed this. And this is something that I teach. This is something that I'm tactically sound in. I feel very, very comfortable talking about. And I could not, as soon as I got blacked out, I got completely disoriented and could not perform the drill. One of the captains, who's one of my friends, was just like, dude, are you all right? I kept telling him I was sick. I went home that shift, and I had to fly out to New Jersey. Went to New Jersey to go visit my aunt. My aunt was in hospice. I flew up there with my father. And when I got up to Jersey, we went and visited her one night. The next day I woke up in the morning. I wasn't feeling good. My dad said, hey, you look like shit. Why don't you just sleep this off for a little bit? And, we'll get ready to get on the airplane. My dad came in there. The entire the bed was covered in blood. I was barely conscious. He called EMS. EMS got there. I kind of regained consciousness at this time. They pulled me. They loaded me on the stretcher. In the midst of coughing up blood, I was like, hey, I need a line. I'm going to pass out. And the guy looks at me and he's like, hey, man, we're EMTs. And I was like, fuck, I'm going to die. So they rushed me over there. I get to a hospital in Vineland in South Jersey. Not the best hospital. And they sit there. They try to stop the bleed. They can't stop the bleeding. I ended up having, I think, 17 blood transfusions at that point. Ended up coding, went to cardiac arrest. They did CPR. After that, they got my pressure back up. Everything started turning around a little bit, but I needed to get to a specialty unit. At that time, I was flown from Vineland Hospital to Cooper's in New Jersey. Cooper's got there. The guy was like, hey, man, we could save this guy. And they did what's called a TIPS procedure, where they do some rerouting. They kind of get rid of the hypertension that's causing the bleeding and everything else like that. My mother flies up this time. While my mom gets up there, she was horrified at the scene that was going on, but there was actually a really cool story that I want to tie into this that kind of hits the brotherhood aspect of things and the support that I think is really, really important in this entire story. So I'm in the hospital. She's scared. Everyone thinks I'm going to die. Captain Joe Fox flies up there. They're trying to navigate everything. This hospital's in fucking Camden, right? You guys are somewhat familiar with Jersey. My mom's never been there before. And so I guess it's like they're getting ready to like go to bed and everything else. My mom's like, oh, I got to get over to the hotel. One of the guys was there and she was like, all right, so I'm going to leave. And they're like, how are you getting to the hotel? And she's like, oh, I'm going to walk. And they were like, no, don't go walking anywhere. So anyway, what ended up happening, a couple phone calls happened, and actually a battalion from Camden Fire Department came up, picked my mom up, got her some food, and brought her over to the hospital. I was in a different fucking state, and all of a sudden, that resounding theme of brotherhood is still going on. So here we go, right? This is my fucking legacy. 1985 to 2021, and that's what should have been on my fucking epitaph or my tombstone was drunk, because that's all I was at that point. I wasn't a fireman. All the good stuff I'd done had been erased. Everything was gone. That was me, right? How horrible for my mom to have to look at that shit. Like I said, at this point, my parents weren't really sure what was going to happen with me. They knew they had to get me down, back down to Fort Lauderdale for some more, I guess, surgeries at that point. And the first flight, while this was all going on, another portion of the brotherhood thing, when I got sick, a GoFundMe was started, and in 2 days, they raised $50,000 to get me home. $50,000 for a drunk. Did I deserve any of that shit? Absolutely not. So getting to that point, 2 flights, I ended up bottoming out. On the first flight, they had to turn around, get me back in the hospital, stabilize me, and this was my welcome home. I am not a fucking burn victim. I'm not a cancer survivor. I'm none of these things, and this was the welcome that I have. I didn't deserve any of this. Am I happy that it happened? 100%, because it blew my mom away. But they had 8 or 9 trucks out on the runway. They brought my crew out there. My chief was there, and this guy who's going to play a big point in the story, Dr. Roach, was there also, as well as some of Broward County as well. Talking to Danny Moran, who was there, who ended up driving the rescue to bring me to the hospital, Chief Moran said that he was sitting in there, and the doctor was sitting next to him. And the doctor told him, hey, man, what's wrong? He's like, this is one of my best friends. And, like, he doesn't look good. And the doctor looked at me and goes, yeah, he looks like he's about to die. But don't worry, we're going to get him a liver. Don't worry about it. And Danny just kind of looked at him and was like, oh, all right. So anyway, after this, I ended up staying in the hospital. I was in a coma, a medically induced coma for 3 weeks. Thank God they didn't do the stoma. They kept extubating me, but I couldn't control, I guess, my oxygen levels. So they kept re-intubating me. So I got done with all this, and it was like I left Jersey, and I sounded like a fucking Jersey woman and smoked cigarettes her entire life when I was trying to talk. So I was in the hospital. What's crazy about coming out of a coma and sitting there and being all these different drugs is your body doesn't know how to react. It was kind of weird for me. Like I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. My arm was stuck over here from where I was laying, and I had to go through physical and occupational therapy. So now I feel like we're in a good room where I can actually tell this fucking story. So we're going to tell it. So a gross story, right? So I'm starting to come around a little bit. This is going to be my first day at PT. And they're sitting there, and so I don't know if you guys know this or not, but you kind of lose control of your bowels and everything else when you guys are, been in a coma for a long time. So when I woke up, I had a Foley catheter in, and I had a tube running out of my ass. I didn't know what it was for until I had to go to the bathroom, and I realized, okay, now this thing just kind of like pushes everything out. Well, They were going to give me some antibiotics, and they're like, hey, get ready for your first day of PT. And I was just like, oh, perfect. They're like, are you ready? And I was like, well, actually, I got to go to the bathroom. And this thing, like loud farting noises every time I went to the bathroom because of this tube that was in my ass. So I asked this lady to leave. So she sit there, I go about my business, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, that feels kind of wet. And I reach back, and I look at my hand, and my hand is covered in shit. And I was just like, oh, my God. So I have to ring the buzzer. There's, bed's all messed up. I ring the buzzer. This lady walks in, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Don't worry about it. She's like, let me go talk to the doctor real quick. I'm going to check and make sure everything's right or whatever. I'm going to have someone in there to clean. So I'm like, okay. Now, mind you, this entire time I'm so horrified. I've had 1,000 hot nurses come here and look at my little Irish dick the entire time. It's just, there's nothing great about anything that's been happening, right? So now I've just added a whole nother element of just the grossness and complete humiliation. So all of a sudden, this big Jamaican lady walks in, and she's looking at me, and she is pissed off, right? Because I can't move anything, right? They got to move me over and grab the chucks out, and then she's got to wipe my ass like I was a baby. Well, anyway, the lady comes in. After she leaves, the nurse comes in. She's like, hey, I checked everything. Everything's fine. Continue going to the bathroom. Everything will be great. So I said, okay. So I sit there, I roll over again. I try to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, oh, my God. And I reach back there, and sure as shit, I had done the exact same thing again. So I got to fucking hit this buzzer again. So I hit the buzzer. She comes back in, and she was just like, oh, my God, it happened again. All right, well, I just talked to the doctor. We're going to actually remove it today. You can go to the bathroom like a normal person. Let me go get the lady again. Oh, fuck. So this woman, all 250 pounds of her, walks in, man, and she's got an even worse look, and she's scaring the shit out of me, and she's sitting there, and she's throwing me all over this bed like I was a rag doll. And so after that happens, the one woman comes in, my nurse, she comes in, and she's like, all right, Matty, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this out. I'm actually bringing another nurse in to sit here and watch it because she's never done this before. So I was like, okay, perfect. Great. So all of a sudden, this girl walks in, drop dead gorgeous. Fuck. Right? And I'm a mess. And she sits there, and, like I'm just sitting there, and they're going to have me stand up for the first time. Now, this is COVID times, too, so everybody's kind of in proper, I'm going to set the mood for you a little bit. Everyone's in proper PPE. They got the face shield on, the whole thing. There's this beautiful bay window overlooking downtown Fort Lauderdale. Right? You guys know where this is going? Anyway, so she sits there, and she's like, all right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have him stand up and bend over. And this is the first time I've stood up since I've been in the coma, so my legs are shaking, everything hurts, and they've lurched me over this chair, and I'm just kind of hanging out like this. Very horrible, like not a good position. And so I'm sitting there, and she's like, all right, so now we're going to deflate the cuff. And I see her, and she's got a 60cc syringe. I'm like, what the fuck is that for? And I was like, it didn't click in me, like, how is this tube stuck in my ass? Well, there's a 60cc ball holding this thing in my ass. So she jams this thing in there, she deflates this cuff, and I'm like, oh my God, man, all that pressure in my stomach is gone. I was like, Jesus, I feel great. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I gotta shit. So this woman's sitting there, and I can't mouth anything out because I'm stressed so much, and I'm trying to hold everything in it. I can't say anything to her. She's like, all right, we're going to pull this out on 1, 2, and on 3, this lady fucking yanks this thing out like she was starting at K-12. I spray shit all over this woman. All over this woman. She's just sitting there, and I'm bent over, and I'm just shitting all over her. She's fucking taking it everywhere. The other girl runs out of the fucking room. And she just stops, and now I'm laying in the bed. Everything's still coming out of me, and I'm crying. I'm so sorry. Right? And the woman's like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And she looked like the mud thing, just sitting there, just fucked up. So she inches away from the fucking window, and sure as shit, it looked like somebody had spray painted. So anyway, guess what? Now I'm all dirty again. So what's going to happen? She's going to hit that button, and that mean Jamaican lady comes back in. So she comes storming in this room, and she looks at me, and she goes, nasty man, you are a nasty man. So anyway. Okay. So whatever, I end up rehabbing, getting better. Now I go to sleepaway camp number 2. And like I said beforehand, the main goal, if anybody's thinking about or has a friend that wants to go to recovery, is just to understand you have to want to be there for yourself. No one else, right? The place that I went to was Shatterproof. I don't know because I've heard of it before. I'm a big advocate for it. It's helped a lot of my friends out. It was a great place. Like I said, usually you're in there for about a month, 2 months. We've had guys stay for 7. We have a really good relationship with them in our benevolent and our union, and they got us in there. But like I said, I went there for the right reasons this time, and I took everything they had to give. Where I thought that breath work was fucking stupid the first time, I went in there and I did it, and I loved it. And I actually started getting better. So anyway, I get out of sleepaway camp. As soon as I finished that, they were like, hey man, Like, do you want to go back to work? Because the insurance was trying to get me back in there. And I was like, yeah, I'll go back to work. So with that said, when I sat there and I was in my rehabilitation center and the doctors and all the GI people were coming in to speak to me, they were like, hey, listen, your liver is shot. There's nothing you can do about it. There's not enough time. There's no regeneration. A lot of people think that the liver just completely like will start fixing itself. And it does to a point. But once the tissue is dead, there's no reversing it. So he's like, you're going to need a liver transplant. We're going to have to do all these tests so we can get you on a liver list. Like I previously said before, this is the first time I've been sober in a really long time. I tried a whole bunch of times to get sober and it never worked out. And I was finally feeling somewhat sound and a good person, right? I finally felt like I was actually starting to feel like I had some character in me. I couldn't for the right mind of me think that I was going to stay sober. And at that moment, I was still kind of not off the wall yet about dying, even though everything I went through. So I told the doctor I'm not getting on the list. And he was like, well, you have a year and a half to live. And I was just like, okay. And I kind of rode with that. So I figured I had a year left, right? That time, the clock had turned over. And I thought I had a year to sit there and kind of right some of the wrongs that I had done in my life, right? And people that I mistreated. But the main goal was, I wonder if I could stay sober for a year, which I thought was completely impossible. I thought the exact same thing was going to happen as soon as I left rehabilitation. So this is 6 months later, right? 6 months later from being in a coma. This is the doctor that actually took me out of the ambulance when I was at the hospital. That's Dr. Roach. He's our medical director. Solid dude. And that's Chief Moran with me. And I got to bring him into his first fire. So it was pretty awesome, right? So I had a year left. And instead of traveling and doing all these things, what do I want to do? I want to go get crushed at work. I want to get back on the truck. I want to go to jobs. I want to go do things. So character, purpose, hope, right? So this is me, right? This is me turning yellow, right? I don't know if you can see this and forget my gay friends in the back, but that's a normal skin tone and that's me over here. Under it, my nickname that my beautiful friends came up with, that they called me constantly, Matty Johnson instead of Johnson. They were relentless. They were relentless. They did not pull any punches, right? Also, they did not know that I was going to die or I had a year or anything going on, but these guys lit me up every day, every day. They called me Liberace, Matty Johnson, or Matty Jaundice. What else? Oh, we have an Asian guy on our job. His name is Jan. So they called me Matty Johnson because I was yellow. I really like pizza, and it was my cook day, and I was like, hey, they were like, hey, Matty, we want pizza. And I was like, oh, sweet, dude, perfect. I'll order some pies. And they're like, no, there's this new place in Fort Lauderdale. And I was like, yeah, what is it? What's it called? And they were like, Papa Jaundice. And I was like, right? So anyway, I'm sitting here, and I'm at this point, my health is really starting to deteriorate, right? Like, but my mind is so fucking strong, guys. We talk about our mind being a muscle and stuff like that. Because first time in my life, I actually felt like I was able to like control my emotions, and I didn't want to drink, but my body was really starting to fail me. It got to the point probably about 6-7 months in to where I couldn't take my boots off at work. I'd have to sleep in my uniform because my calves would swell up to probably about like the top of my toe, not to mention the disgusting color. The body aches and everything from liver failure are said to be some of the worst. I do not recommend it to anybody. I was in pain for an entire year, but to be honest with you, my head was so strong at that point and clear that like I didn't really, I couldn't fathom it. And here we are again, right? This goddamn Reaper keeps coming after me, right? So I ended up going to a blood work visit. I got some blood work done, and I'm looking really, really shitty right now. I just got back from into the job. I went to Wichita, and everybody was looking at me like, what the fuck happened to this guy? I had gotten back. I went and had blood work done. I got a phone call. I was at lunch, and they were like, you need to go to the hospital right now. Make sure it's a transplant center. Go. So I got in my truck. I drove to Cleveland Clinic. I got there. Once I got to Cleveland Clinic, they sat there, they ran my blood work, did everything, and they walked me into a different room. There was about 8 or 9 different doctors there, and they were like, how are you still alive? And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, your ammonia levels, you should have been unconscious 2 months ago. You should be dead right now. How are you still here? The only thing that I can think of is that at this point I had fallen in love with being alive and the life that I was starting to live, that I just wouldn't let my body quit. So a doctor came in and was just like, hey man, this is it. There's nothing we can do. They were like, you're too far gone for transplant. You're not going to make it through the transplant. And so we're just going to have to get you comfortable. And it's a kind of horrible feeling. And it wasn't so bad that like, cause you know, I come to terms with the fact that I was going to pass away, But at that moment, like something happened for the first time in my life where I was like, I don't want to fucking die. It was crazy. Like I can't put it into words what it felt like, but like for the first time I was scared. Beforehand, I never gave a shit about anything. So right around this time, I end up getting put in hospice, right? In the hospital. So as soon as this gets told to me, now I realize I have to call my mom and I have to have the hardest conversation I've ever had before in my life. My mom comes down. I said, hey, tell dad to come down too. So they get there, they get to the hospital and they're like, oh, what'd they tell you? And I was like, well, they said my liver's done. And she goes, okay, so we're going to do this transplant thing. And I was like, I never got on a transplant list. And she was like, excuse me? And I was just like, to be honest with you, I didn't think that I could stay sober and I couldn't for the right mind of me get a liver from somebody that someone else could have used and done great things in their life and just waste it like I've done my entire life with everything. And I've never seen emotion like that. My mom lost her son that day in the hospital room. My dad was very stoic, and then my mom said he broke down afterwards, but it was horrible. Dr. Roach, right? The guy who I said is going to keep playing a name in this story, is the head of the ER for Cleveland Clinic Hospital. He comes downstairs and he's like, what's going on? The room is a fucking mess. My mom's hysterical. And he's like, what's going on? You know, I read all your things or whatever. And I told him, I said, hey, transplant wants nothing to do with me. They say I'm too far gone. Like, you know, this is the hospice scenario. And he's like, do me a favor and don't die tonight. And I was like, shit. All right, no problem. So the next day, I wake up, they've moved me to a room at this point, and, you know, hanging out. Transplants comes down and they're like, hey, listen, we don't want anything to do with you. Your numbers are too fucked up. But Dr. Roach is like ahead at the hospital, so we kind of got to do what he says. We're going to put you through a series of 4 days of testing. You're probably going to die while you're doing it because we have to take a lot of blood. We have to do a physical stress test. We have to do a cardiac cath. We have to do all the shit to make sure you're okay. And I was like, okay, send it. So I go through this 4 days of testing. I end up passing out 2 times, more blood transfusions. Anyway, I end up passing all of the tests. Right? So you're saying there's a chance, right? I'm still fighting at this point, right? Still yellow as shit. So now, I don't know if you know this before or anybody who's ever gone through transplant. Well, with liver transplant, you have a MELD score, which kind of dictates like where you are as far as your liver failure and how long you got to live. So if your MELD score is real high, you're going to die soon, but it gets you a really good list on the number on the list in the transplant side. So I've got that going for me. The one thing that I don't have going for me is while I was in that year of just living it up and being on the engine, I ended up getting a weird injury on my knee. We had an extrication, there was rebar out, and I ended up sticking my knee with a piece of rebar. I got a wound, it never healed. So they were concerned that there was a really bad infection in my knee, but they also thought that my hemoglobin was so low that I couldn't clot or like fix anything anymore. So there was a day of testing just on my knee to make sure there was no infection. So the infection got cleared. And then what ends up happening afterwards is all of the doctors in the hospital have like a survivor fucking moment where they sit there and they set a fire and they kind of like dictate who lives and who dies. So they sit there and they get everybody around and, you know, whatever, they've got their black cloaks on and they've fucking decided to keep me on the fucking island, right? And so they come back in and they're like, hey, guess what? We're going to put you on the liver list. You passed everything. You are now a candidate for transplant. But we can't promise anything because you're so shitty that you're probably going to die before you get a liver. Kind of what they said. Dr. Roach came in, gave everybody a hug, and this is about 6 hours later, and he goes, you get a phone call yet? And I was like, no. So they tell you you're going to get this like mysterious phone call. It could come any time at night, right? So I was afraid to go to sleep. I was afraid to do anything. And so I'm just sitting there staring at this phone. So that night I'm sitting there watching South Park on the TV, just like trying not to die. And all of a sudden this phone rings, and I get this phone call. And this is Matty Johnson. And I was like, yep. And they were like, this is so-and-so from the liver transplant unit. We want to let you know that we found a donor that's suitable. And we'd just like to know if you would accept the liver. And I was just like, so I'm sitting there and I've never done this before, right? And so I was just like, so let me ask you a question. Do you take the first one or do you like hold out for a better one? Like, how does this kind of like, and the lady starts laughing. She's like, listen, we can't tell you what to do, but we're telling them it's a good idea that you take it. And I was just like, okay, yes. So we hang the phone up and she goes, well, before I hang up, I want to let you know, she's like, you got about 5 minutes. So call whoever you need to because you're going to break down and start crying. And I was like, nah, bullshit. I'm excited. So I call my mom and I'm like, hey, and she's like, what happened? And I was just like, and I went to tell her and I just fucking died, right? I was dead. There was nothing they could do about it. I was dead. And now all of a sudden there's a chance, right? I was I could not say a word. Anyway, when I finally composed myself, I called her. She was super excited. She's like, do you want me to come to the hospital? I was like, no. Ended up calling all my buddies, letting them know. They were all real pumped. And 16 hours after I got the phone call, not dead yet. There it is, right? 13-hour surgery. It went real bad. I ended up finding out that I actually have like a deathly allergy to Toradol. It was crazy. I woke up the first week after transplant. You're kind of still like under the meds and stuff like that. And I kind of had that experience with everything else. But I woke up. So the Toradol thing apparently makes me into a violent rage, like a werewolf or something like that. So respiratory therapy came in and was screwing with me or whatever. And apparently I bit the respiratory therapist. They had to subdue me. They had to subdue me, and I woke up and I was fucked up. These security guards lumped me up. They did not care. And so anyway, here we are, not dead yet. So after all this, and I acted like a psychopath, in true fireman fashion, like I had a sitter with me. When I woke up, I had the posies on, and I was just kind of in there like, what the fuck is going on? And my mom tried to explain it to me. So anyway, I had a sitter in here. And so finally I asked this sitter, I go, hey, I don't think the nurses like me too much. And she was just like, well, and I go, what happened? She was like, you said some really mean things to those nurses. And I was just like, ooh. So what I ended up doing was, nurses love coffee and donuts. I spent like $300 at Dunkin' Donuts, had everything sent over to them and wrote it on there. Say, hey, this is the patient in one. I'm really a nice guy. I'm really sorry I was a dickhead. I love you all. Please come say hi. And afterwards, everything was fine. So getting back after this, right? So hopefully a little bit in a small way, I want to talk about the support system here, right? Throughout this the entirety of all of this, I had the biggest amount of support. Like I can't put it into words what these guys went through, what they did for me, whether it was covering shifts, whether it was being at the hospital, was it making sure my parents got fed throughout the entire thing. These guys were there for everything. This isn't obviously everybody, right? This is just the dudes that are on my job. And I'll say their fucking names out loud because they deserve it. It's Captain Ramirez, it's Captain Fox, Chief Danny Moran, Captain Mejia. There it is. This is the little Asian guy. It's the one that I look like, Tony Yan. And I was almost going to look like Kazare, the black guy at the bottom. But so we got Kaz, Chief Salzano, and then we got Captain Ricci, and Captain Cabrera in the middle. All of these dudes were here in such a big way. And I think that really facilitated a lot of my success coming out of it. So this is 6 months after transplant. I was assigned to the training division and really got that love back, man. Being with the kids, if you guys ever feel like you're losing a little bit of that love and passion for the job, sitting there and being able to deal with recruits is so cool, man. Because they have that fire in them, right? They're excited, right? A fucking fire alarm goes off and these kids are running to the truck. And you get kind of jaded and you miss a little bit of that. So I got put into training, and I was in there with like my best friends. So the training bureau at the time, we all came over together. We had 2 smoke divers in there. So physically I was spent. They got me back in the shape I needed to be in. And after putting out 2 recruit classes, 6 months later, I was back on the truck, which was amazing because when this all started happening, especially when transplant became a thing, the doctors had come in and said, hey, like, what do you plan on doing afterwards? Right. Cause we have to sit there and you get a psych eval before transplant. They're like, what do you plan on doing afterwards? And I was like, fuck, like, what do you mean? Be a fireman. They're like, yeah, it's you can't do that anymore. Like you don't have an immune system anymore. You're on anti-rejection meds. That's not even a possibility. You need to have a backup plan. And I was just like, I don't fucking know anything besides the fire service and bartending, which I probably shouldn't fucking do anymore. But anyway, this is kind of cool, right? To tie into the whole Reaper shit and everything else. This is my letter from Cleveland Clinic. Mr. Johnson, it'll be easier to read here. Is a liver transplant recipient under our care. Matthew Johnson is released to return to work with no restrictions on 10/13/23. Friday the 13th, I got to come back to work, man. That shit was hard as shit. Right? So real quick, this guy's a fucking lunatic, right? Goggins, right? Who's going to carry the boats, right? So I hate acronyms, right? I fucking hate acronyms. And, but I ended up making one just for this because like I thought it'd be good. So balls. So in my recovery, this is kind of like what I went through, right? Everything that like from the steps, whether it was going to rehabilitation, was it sitting there talking to a clinician? Was it therapy? Was it all that stuff? Recovery takes balls. It is going to be the fucking hardest thing you've ever done in your life, but it pays the most, right? Doing something small is going to yield you something shitty, but sitting there and digging in and really trying to make yourself better physically, mentally, and everything is going to be so conducive to everything else that needs to happen in recovery. Ownership. It's so easy for an addict or an alcoholic or anybody to sit there and make excuses on why their life ended up a certain way, right? I know for me, it was real easy. Man, I'm blaming my fucking friend that killed himself. You know, I'm blaming all this trauma that I have to fucking see, all of this stuff. That's bullshit. You are not going to be able to fix yourself until you make yourself the fucking problem, because that's something that I can fix, right? I have control over all the shit that I'm doing wrong in my life. Ownership. Accountability. Same thing, but I wouldn't have been able to write boats, so I just put accountability in there. Time. I wanted to put patience, but I don't think boats would have worked. But time is super, just understanding that it's going to take time, right? You might fail at recovery, right? You might fail at that mental health journey the first time. You might fall back down to that pit. But if we sit there and we get back to the balls and the accountability and stuff, and we sit there and we stay persistent and we fucking push it the entire time, we're going to eventually get there. But time and patience is so fucking hard, because we want to feel great right off the rip, but we're not going to. Especially with me with alcoholism, dude. Like, I wanted to fucking drink. I wanted to like do dumb shit again, and I couldn't, because I wasn't part of the process. Support. I already showed you guys the picture of what my support looked like. It was amazing, and it's the key that ties everything in. Be that buddy, right? Check on your homies. That's what it says on the shirt, right? Check on your fucking homies, man. If you see something's wrong, just ask them about it and be there. It's, you know, we are our brother's keepers. We are our sister's keepers. It's so important to just sit there and let these people know that we're here for you. Anything you need, right? And with that said, it's been a fucking pleasure. Thank you guys so much for fucking listening to me talking about dying.